Congressman Jake Auchincloss stopped by Powers Hall for a town hall with Needham residents on Sunday, March 27th. After a few remarks regarding current topics being discussed on Capitol Hill, those in attendance had the opportunity to ask the congressman questions and share their thoughts on issues they believe to be important. Here's Ashley Moran with some highlights of the event.
One recurring theme of the town hall was the Russian invasion into Ukraine. Congressman Auchincloss shared what he believes needs to be done to help Ukraine.
There's not just two parties. It's not just Russia and Ukraine talking to each other from across the table. It's Russia and Ukraine with China behind Russia and NATO behind Ukraine. And we need to use a credible, coordinated threat of secondary sanctions on the Chinese to convince them to cut off their lifeline to the Kremlin. Right now, the most important source of hard currency for the Kremlin, and indeed the most important diplomatic and economic lifeline they have, is their energy and commodities and food contracts with China, and with the assurances that China will continue to support them, even implicitly on the world stage. We have got to push China off the sidelines of history. It is too significant of a nation to feel like they can sit this one out. And although they are vastly more integrated and important to the global economy than Russia is, and secondary sanctions on Chinese institutions would have blowback on Western countries, some things are worth fighting for and sacrificing for. And we need to make these potential of secondary sanctions clear to China, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult to gain leverage over Russia at the negotiating table. We can assist, and we have assisted Ukraine in closing their skies without engaging in a no-fly zone. And I think that at this point, and this can evolve, at this point that is the appropriate restraint to show. Because a no-fly zone, although it can sound passive, is an act of war under international law. We should be very clear about that. A no-fly zone means the United States needs to be shooting down Russian fighter pilots, needs to be bombing Russian surface-to-air installations. That is an act of war against a nuclear-armed power. And I think that would be risk an escalation in potentially an uncontained way. But we can do a lot short of that, and I'll just call out two in particular. One is whatever the Ukrainians need, we should be sending them. Right now, and here I have disagreed with the administration, they're making this distinction between defensive and offensive weapons. Well, we'll send you, like the air defense systems, but we're not so sure about the fighter jets and the S-300 long-range missiles. We should not be getting into arguments about distinction without a difference. Like, send them what they need. Number two, and I mentioned this briefly in my opening remarks, is electronic warfare. Electronic warfare is an escalation. We should be clear about that. It is. It's a containable one because it's plausibly deniable and it's very targeted on just Russian forces in Ukraine, and it's nonviolent, obviously. But it can severely degrade the ability of ground forces to operate. I was in the infantry for 4 years, and all you're doing as a young officer is talking on the radio to other people. You're talking to your other tanks and mounted infantry units, you're talking to airplanes, you're talking to helicopters, you're talking to artillery. Those radios don't work, if those computers don't work, you are back in the Middle Ages. You are a sitting duck for Ukrainian special operations raids, and the Ukrainian SOF are very good, and they're getting actionable intelligence from us in real time.
The war in Ukraine brought to light another issue, America's dependence on foreign oil, which frequently leads the U.S. to rely on countries with dictatorships.
We are seeing clear as day the geosecurity hazards. We as a country cannot have to call Russia, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and Iran on the phone when we need more energy supplies in a crisis. That is not a secure place for us to be as a country. The Republicans say they want energy independence, and I look to them and I say, yes. We want clean energy independence. And here in Massachusetts, we can lead the charge on that. Geothermal, offshore wind, solar, battery technology, fusion. All of these areas are, one, the fastest job creators in the nation, and two, the innovations that are going to get us to 100% renewable, reliable energy that will be good for the environment, good for our health, and good for the security of the United States and our allies. So let's take this as a further catalyst to action to transition to a 100% clean energy economy.
Congressman Auchincloss emphasized the importance of promoting clean energy throughout the town hall, even beyond its environmental and political consequences.
It's just a lot of jobs for Massachusetts. We've done terrifically well in the last 20 years in life sciences and medical device technology, not just in the Boston-Cambridge area, but even farther afield in the suburbs and We're seeing biomanufacturing and R&D happening throughout the Commonwealth. We can do that with clean energy. We are doing that with clean energy. And I want to make sure that the research dollars that are flowing from the federal government are going to Massachusetts, and that the companies that are getting founded here, they're staying here and become the seedbeds of clusters going forward.
A repeated concern among constituents was the state of democracy in the U.S. and what can be done to prevent the manipulation of election outcomes in the near future.
We got to get something past the Senate in the next 6 months. And the way to do that is a specific targeted piece of legislation to protect the independence and autonomy of secretaries of state and town clerks throughout the country. You all know this. We don't have a national election system. We got 50 state election systems. And the way that this gets stolen in 2024, and I do believe that he's going to try to steal it, is not necessarily through these wide-scale voter suppression tactics, although that might happen, but probably more likely that a state legislature will vote to allocate the popular results differently than they actually came up. That they'll say to the Secretary of State, I know you tabulated it this way, it was 51-49, we actually think it was different. And the scary thing is, under the Constitution as it's currently drafted, they can do that. And so we have got to have legislation that can protect the independence and that prescribes more diligently how those electors get cast. So that's one very specific answer for preventing a stolen election in 2024, which to me is still the clear and present nightmare scenario.
The hour-long town hall is available on our website, needhamchannel.org. For the Needham Channel News, I'm Ashley Morin.